Hello, and welcome to another episode of Innovista Values. I'm Vic Bakhru, CEO of Innovista Health, and today I have the great pleasure of being joined by Jonathan Owens, our Chief Analytics Officer. Jonathan, welcome.
Thanks, Vic. I'm glad to be here.
Great to have you here, as I said, and so let's dig right in. The Chief Analytics Officer role here at Innovista is a central one as you think about the value-based care ecosystem and the important work that you and your team do to get our providers set up for success. Tell me a little bit about what attracted you to this particular role and to Innovista more broadly.
Great question. I've lived in value-based care my entire career. I've had the privilege of working in a practice very early on before lots of the world knew what value-based care was. And so I knew what it was, and value-based care and the ability to care for patients is at my core. And so when I was looking for my next career move, I was looking around and I found Innovista, and then going through the interview process, I was interviewing the organization as much as it was interviewing me. But I found a team of people that were committed to driving success. To your point, driving relationships with providers, because the relationships that we have with our providers and with our providers have with the patients to take actions is what drives outcomes in this value-based care world.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more with that, especially that last part. So let's go a little bit deeper. The Houston market in particular for value-based care has a lot going on right now. And more broadly, the Texas market, as you well know, Innovista specializes in Illinois and Texas. And, I think we're probably one of the biggest platforms operating in these geographies. You have lived in Texas your whole life for the most part. Do I have that right?
You do. Yes,
okay.
My whole life.
And so, what's special about the Texas market from the viewpoint of someone who really understands value-based care in your case, and someone who's actually grown up and really understands the geography and the people?
Vic, I think everything's bigger in Texas. There's your first one.
Okay.
Is in Texas, there's a huge, as Texas and some other states that have lots of retiree population, we obviously have a large Medicare Advantage population. So that sort of makes the natural breeding ground, you might say, for value-based care. And in that regard, it's a little bit different just in terms of the scale and the vastness of the state. But I think I would just go back to, I think value-based care is the same no matter where it is. And the principles that apply everywhere. And so that's probably one of our challenges, and maybe the root of your question is, how do we actually deliver that best-in-class experience no matter the geography, no matter the population, and even to the point of not just Medicare Advantage, but in commercial and Medicaid and all lines of business to all patients?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I have admired about your particular filling of this role since you joined us, several months ago is your ability to really, take a lot of the noise and very efficiently hone in on the most important elements that deliver the biggest returns for our providers and the biggest outcomes, the best outcomes for our patients and members. Tell me a little bit about, how do you maintain that laser focus? How do you, when you show up every day at work, make a conscious decision that this is the stuff we're going to work on and this is the stuff we're going to put on hold or not do intentionally? Like, what's that calculus like for you on a day-to-day basis?
Well, the first thing I might say is it may appear that way above the water, but as we know, the speed are always going a million miles an hour. So there is chaos.
Sure.
But I think it's an intentionality. It's just, to your point, it's how do you do it? I think you just commit to doing it. And it just anecdotally, I've shared with you and the rest of the organization, a mantra that I'm using with my team right now is our motto for the rest of this year in 2024 is we're flipping the script. And so we have the FLIMP, and the F stands for focus on the things that matter. And that's the things that matter in a number of ways. The things that you can tangibly tie to a patient outcome or a better provider experience, or even as we think about how do we maintain a sustainable business, what does the ROI tell us as to help form the decisions of what we do and don't do. So I think it's just a strategic mindset to focus.
Yeah. No, I think there's an intentionality around it, right? You have to sort of, approach it with that level of discipline to say, okay, well, we can't do it all. And actually doing it all doesn't even deliver the most value in a value-based care effort. And so you end up focusing, therefore, on the items that drive the most value. Where do you think the industry as a whole, value-based care, where do you think we as an industry need to do better? What is left on the horizon to get right such that providers and patients receive even more benefits than they already have, and payers for that matter?
I think it's a fundamental shift. I think some of the new players in the value-based care space actually don't think about it as value-based care, and they think
Yeah.
about it as a value-based contract.
Mhm.
And they are one and the same, but they are not the same. And I have seen, again, from my experience, the intentionality of truly delivering better care and outcomes for patients will make the contract work.
Yes.
But if your first and foremost focus is on making the contract work and not necessarily meeting the patient outcomes, I think you're fundamentally flawed. And I think we've seen evidence of some players who may have done that who were not able to sustain the model. And so I think that's the fundamental shift we need is it's not an economic game first and foremost. It can come out on the outcome, but that's a secondary outcome. And the primary outcome is delivering truly better care to people and individuals.
Yeah. No, absolutely. What's the best way to partner with providers to get the right information in front of them?
First and foremost, what you give the provider has to be right. If you put a piece of paper in front of them, they know their data better than you do. And so if you give them something wrong, you're off on the wrong foot. They will cut you some slack and they realize there may be a little bit of error, but you give them something's wrong, you're just not going to win. And the second thing, it has to be easy. You and I talked about this in one of our
Yes.
interviews. Showing up once a month with a piece of paper is a horrible idea. So, what are the tools that integrate within their EMR, within their daily workflows that give them the right information at the right time? AKA, what does Betty need while she's in front of you? Do these two things and don't worry about anything else, and that will make a difference in your world. So, it's the right data at the right time in a digestible, consumable format.
Yeah. Is there a role for other people in the office setting to play when it comes to digesting the analytics and reporting information in furtherance of our value-based care initiatives?
Absolutely. I think team-based care and value-based care are almost synonyms, and
Yeah.
it starts at check-in. And so if there is something, and there is something for the person to do at check-in in a doctor's office, they should be presented with that information, and they should start the care conversation right then and right there. And then the MA, the nurse, the provider, the care manager who follows up, they all play a pivotal part, and they need actionable, timely information to drive that care.
Let's talk about innovation in value-based care. The next 10 years, the next 20 years, how does the patient become super central to the process of being able to deliver against these value-based care contracts, being able to realize the full promise of value-based care in totality? What's the role of the patient in the next decade?
So great question and a fascinating concept. And I think where you're going is actually where it fundamentally should start. So you
Yeah.
can't do anything with a patient's care if the patient is not involved. And I think we need to be having these conversations just not to be innovative, but to recognize that that's where it starts. And as we go into a world of more digital and more accessible and more options for patients, they are going to make more choices on their own. So how do we as a society, quite literally, educate patients on value-based care? And what does it mean? It's one of those scenarios where more doesn't always mean more. Sometimes less may mean more, and less services are actually a more streamlined experience. So I think it's education and putting where the patient should be, but putting them first and foremost in their care and making sure they're an active partner. So some of these tools and technologies that we mentioned that may be provider facing, they become patient facing. Not only to tell them what to do in the moment then and there, but also a continuing educational process to making sure they're informed and they're an active participant in their care.
Yeah, no, super helpful and very aligned with everything you just shared. Jonathan, thank you. This has been an incredible session, and I'm so appreciative that we were able to find time to be able to do this together. So thank you.
Thank you, Vic. I enjoyed it as well.
Great. And thank you to our listeners. This has been another great episode of Innovista Values. I hope you'll join us next time. Until then, take care.